thank you all so much for coming tonight. My name is Alexandra Brown Chang, and I'm so excited to be here with all of you to celebrate the US release of Stuck Up and Stupid, written by the amazing Angourie Rice and Kate Rice. This modern YA retelling of Pride and Prejudice is such a fun read, and it effortlessly captures the charm and spirit of the original while still updating it for today's audiences. Perhaps Angourie wants to say a bit more about the book, but I absolutely loved it. It tells the story of Lily, who's an 18-year-old, and her life is forever changed when a group of famous Hollywood actors comes to stay in her hometown of Pippi Beach in Australia for the summer. And a bit more about our amazing writers. In addition to being an author, Angourie also currently stars in the TV show The Last Thing He Told Me, alongside Jennifer Garner, and also notably portrayed Katie Heron in the movie musical Mean Girls. And she's also the writer, producer, and host of the literary podcast, The Community Library. And Kate is an award-winning playwright whose work has been commissioned by countless universities, high schools, and theaters, including Curtin University and the Darwin Theatre Company.
Thank you so much for that lovely introduction. Thank you. We're so happy and excited to be here, especially at Annabelle's Book Club LA. This is such a special space. If you've never been here before, this is an amazing bookstore started by Annabelle, who's Alexandra's sister. And it's dedicated to young adult work. And it's just so fun to be in a space that is just all about celebrating young readers. It's so wonderful. We've come quite far to be here today. We're from Australia, and Australia is home to one of the oldest living cultures in the world. And our novel is primarily set and was written on the lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. And we want to offer our respect and gratitude to the Gadigal people and elders who have a rich history of storytelling and song and continue to honour the land and waterways on which we live, work, and tell stories. This evening, we acknowledge that we are meeting on the land of the Tongva and Chumash people, and we extend our respect and gratitude to elders past and present. It is such a privilege to be here, to spend time on this land with all of you, and to share the joy and history of storytelling. So thank you.
To quickly preface this conversation, much like both of you, I absolutely love anything and everything having to do with Pride and Prejudice. So my expectations were so high going into reading this book, and they were all completely surpassed. It's amazing. It's just a fantastic summer beach read rom-com. So I'm so excited for all of you to be able to read it as well. And to start off, I was wondering, what was it like updating such a beloved classic story for an audience today? How did you strike that balance between updating certain parts of it while also maintaining the characterization and the themes and everything that people have come to love so much about Pride and Prejudice over generations now?
Well, I guess it began with the utmost respect to Jane Austen and to acknowledge her genius. We knew going in that if we're going to do anything where we muck around with Jane Austen, that we were dealing with the absolute best. So we had to be the absolute best we possibly could be. I think it began with looking at the work and working out what translated easily into our world, and then looking at the things that didn't translate so easily, and then trying to what we were trying to do, I guess, is think the way Jane Austen may have done had she been alive now, thinking about how she was very insightful in her critique and satirization and reflection of the contemporary social issues, and we wanted to bring that to contemporary social issues as well. So that was what we aimed to do.
And in terms of setting and place, Jane Austen's novels are all set in small English villages where everybody knows each other and everyone is in each other's business and they're gossiping all the time. And we were thinking about places that we know and love that are like that, and one of them is this small beach community. So this story is based on a place that I grew up going to every summer, and it has that community feel, everybody knows each other, so that felt like a very natural adaptation in terms of bringing it into the modern world. And for our Mr. Darcy, we were thinking about, okay, who is young and rich and well respected and famous, And in contemporary times, it's movie stars and musicians and influencers. So we made our Mr. Darcy into Darian Khan, who is a Hollywood movie star, and that felt like a very natural sort of adaptation as well.
Absolutely, I loved all of the scenes between them, so you guys are in for a major treat when you read it. And another thing that I loved so much about your book is the deep exploration of mother-daughter relationships, perhaps even more so than exists in Pride and Prejudice. What inspired you both to make that change or to emphasize those relationships in the book?
Partly because we were working on it together and we knew that was something that we could bring to it, but also because that was my initial interest in working with Pride and Prejudice, was thinking about why is this story still, like, it continues to be so resonant for so many people through the generations, and thinking about generations of women and generations in a family, you know, what mistakes of our parents we're destined to repeat, and how we hope each generation just develops a little bit further. So that's why we brought it out, I think.
Yes, I think also with Jane Austen's characters in Pride and Prejudice, the main character Elizabeth really struggles with her relationship with her mother, and I think that's because in that time there was not really any space for women to grow, especially after they got married. They were you were married into, you didn't just marry your husband, you married his house, his job, his family. You would move to his house with his family, and I think because of that, the older women characters just don't have that same opportunity to really change, and so that's what we wanted to give that character, the mother character, an opportunity to grow and for her relationship with her daughter to change.
That's really well said. And speaking of mother-daughter relationships, you just touched on this briefly, but what was it like writing the book together? I know I personally would love to work on something together with my mom, but I know a lot of people would find it incredibly difficult working with one of their parents. So I'm curious how that process came about. Is this something that you both have wanted to do for a long time together?
It's nice that you say that, because that you would also like to work with your mom, because as you pointed out, a lot of people come to us and say, I could never do that with my mother or parents. So it was fun. I had a great time.
Yeah, it was great. It wasn't something we had planned necessarily, but it was, I'd had an interest in the story for a long time and was thinking creatively about it for a long time. And then in 2020, Angourie said, I've been watching Clueless, I want to do an updated version of Pride and Prejudice, and I said, well, let's do it together then. Let's go on the journey together, and it was wonderful. It was great. Also because, obviously we've spent a lot of time together, probably more than a lot of families would spend together because of Angourie's travelling as a teenager. So it was great to work on something as two grown-ups. It was really nice.
Amazing. And in a similar vein, I noticed that both of you partially dedicated this book to your sisters as well as your mothers. I'm also in a big family of girls. I have 3 younger sisters, and I find that relationship so special and really unlike anything else. And that's something that I love in your book as well, that really comes through. And I was wondering, did you guys take any inspiration from your real life siblings for any of the characters in this book or any of the scenes that they're featured in?
Definitely the dynamic, like the sister dynamic, and the cousins as well. I grew up going to spend summer holidays in a caravan park with my mother and her sisters, and my aunt and their family, and so my cousins as well. And yeah, that's a very special relationship for me. Is that whole feeling of family as being the place that is home.
I think there's definitely a lot of, my sister, I think in the acknowledgements, I said thank you to her for being like the best of all of the Bennett sisters, because that's how I see her. Like with the 5 sisters in Pride and Prejudice, they all have different qualities. Some are wild and fun, some are more conservative and quiet, and some are really kind, some are more curious, and my sister is kind of all of those rolled into one. And this is for, I think, the women in our family, and it means a lot to us that they picked up on that. That's nice.
And speaking of home, Pippi Beach is so inherently cinematic. When I was reading it, I just wanted to be transported there the entire time. When you both were writing this book, did you envision it as a TV show or a movie or another visual medium?
That's a good question. I think when we thought about the story, we thought, what is going to be the best way to tell this story? And Kate's original idea for a Pride and Prejudice adaptation was going to be a play. And then I came in and said, what if it's a book? And then we thought, oh, what if it's a TV show or a movie? And we stuck with book, I think, because we thought it was going to be the best way to tell this story, and because Pride and Prejudice is a book, and because we wanted to do something that neither of us had done before.
Yeah, I think too with an adaptation and kind of having Jane Austen lead the way for us, we wanted to be able to follow in her footsteps more closely, I think, at this point with the book, definitely.
Of course, and Kate, this question is for you. Speaking of, with your background in theater and playwriting, how did that inform how you approached writing Stuck Up and Stupid? Because I imagine writing plays is very different from writing a novel.
It is different, very different, and I've got quite a few manuscripts of prose that are really, really bad, stuck in the drawer at home that no one's ever going to see because I tried and couldn't do it. But the key with this one was finding the right voice, finding that narrator's voice, because with theatre it's always been very much finding the voices of the different characters, and so finding the narrator as a kind of a character was what made it, was the key for me really to get there.
I also, if you don't mind me sharing this anecdote from my childhood, I don't know what the anecdote is. I could always tell when you were working, when I would like walk past the office door and hear you saying things and talking out loud, and you would always try out the dialogue of the characters that you were writing by saying it out loud, hearing it in the space, and you still did that with this book.
Yes, I do that. I talk out loud while I write.
Well, the dialogue in this book was amazing as well. One of my favorite lines was the one describing Lily's reaction to meeting Dorian for the first time. It made me laugh out loud. She says she hardly knew the guy, and what she knew was not inspiring. And I feel like that is so applicable to so many people. And I was wondering if you both have a particular line or scene that you're especially proud of writing, or perhaps one that you had the most fun writing together.
I remember having a lot of fun. We had an idea for our book, which we stole from Clueless and Mean Girls. Both of those movies have created their own world of slang. And so we had an idea for this book that we weren't going to include any swearing, and instead we were going to come up with creative insults that were rude and mean enough, but were not actual swear words. So some of my favorite silly insults in there are like, he's got to stick up his potato, which I thought was very fun. And then also some of my favorites, I think, never made it in there. We have lists of stupid insults that did not make it in.
Well, actually, the line I can think of most readily is one that we completely ripped off, and that is that great line in Mean Girls when the mother says, "I'm not a regular mom, I'm a cool mom," and we ripped it off, and she says, "I'm not a regular mom, I'm a hot mom."
And Angourie, this question is for you. In addition to writing and acting and podcasting, how do you balance everything? And what is your writing process like when you're constantly busy and on the road?
Well, it helps sharing the workload with someone. We were very lucky in that the first draft that we wrote of Stuck Up and Stupid was in 2020, so I wasn't working. And we actually went to the beach for a month, and we wrote our first draft by hand, a chapter a day, over 4 notebooks. And we each would write a chapter and give the notebook to the other person, and they would write a chapter and read the previous one and add notes. So we had that time to beat out that first terrible handwritten draft. And then from there it was just, stolen moments of going through and editing everything. I really do, like, I think you make time for the things that you love and the things you believe in, and also it's not that I do everything by myself. Like, I have a great family also beyond Kate who just help me with everything, and so I'm not out here alone doing it all. There's a lot of people helping.
And I know you've both touched on this a little bit already, since you've mentioned movies like Mean Girls and Clueless, and of course Emma as well by Jane Austen. Are there any other particular works of fiction or perhaps authors who especially inspire you, or maybe some classic books that you would love to update for a modern audience now?
There are some that my favourites are a little bit more obscure, which makes it harder to, a bit of a harder sell. So it was kind of good to work on one that everyone knows. You know, yes, I have some a favourite Australian author of mine is Henry Richardson, who was writing in the early 20th century, and I would love to update some of her books. She was an Australian woman who wrote under the name of Henry, and also got everyone to call her that actually in real life. Her real name was Ethel.
There are so many classic literary authors who I love and continually inspire me, and Virginia Woolf is a big one for me. Like, I have not made my way through all of her works yet, but I really hope to someday. Her books are, I think, so they really follow stream of consciousness, and Jane Austen is so different in that the plot is so specific, whereas with Virginia Woolf she's very like, this is how I felt today and so this is what I'm writing. But I am, I think, in general inspired by women writers who are doing sort of interesting things at the time that they were writing, even if their novels aren't particularly timeless, or if they're somewhat dated. I think it's really interesting to go back and see what was revolutionary at the time, and how that has influenced fiction today.
Yeah, absolutely. I know for me, Edith Wharton is one of my favorites. I know we have some Edith Wharton fans here tonight as well.
Big, huge Edith Wharton fan.
Yeah, you won't stop talking about it.
And then in a similar theme, this is more about the male characters, but I have to ask for all the Pride and Prejudice fans out there, who is your favorite Mr. Darcy? Matthew McFadyen or Colin Firth?
Colin Firth.
Really? Wow, I'm firmly in the Matthew camp. I love Colin Firth too, but I was just rewatching it because I don't know if any of you all went, but the 20th anniversary of the movie, a lot of theaters were showing it again, and I rewatched it this week, and it's just as good.
I think all Darcys are valid and gorgeous and beautiful. And I read somewhere that like the first album that you listen to from an artist is always going to be your favorite. And maybe that's true for Mr. Darcy too. Colin Firth was my first Mr. Darcy, and he's my favorite.
He wasn't my first Mr. Darcy. Also, Laurence Olivier is pretty good Mr. Darcy.
And what's next for both of you? I don't know how much you can say, but I heard that you're both working on another book, which is very exciting, and I would just love to hear what you're planning to work on next together.
Well, we've got a few other things in the pipeline. The pipeline is long and goes in lots of different directions. I want to also say, you asked that question before about, how do you juggle everything? I'm not going to sit up here and say I juggle a million things, because I don't. I really can only work on one thing at a time at any given moment with creative works. So it's about going from this project to another one, wherever that may be, and then getting it to a point where I can leave it and then move on to another one. But yeah, we do have a couple more things coming up together, which is really exciting.
Yes, absolutely. We're not done writing together. We're not done writing YA either. Like, I would love to continue writing for the similar audiences.
Come back to this show.
Yeah, come back here. So I think we're so. I mean, we had so much fun writing this, and when we wrote it, we well, Kate was always reminding me, don't think about the audience at the end, like just write it for us, write it for ourselves. And I hope we keep doing that, because I mean, it's amazing that it's gotten published and it's out there and we're here with all of you. It's like the most wonderful thing. But really just sort of, yeah, keeping at it, keeping on writing what we want to write and hoping that other people want to read it, I guess.
Absolutely. I'm so glad to hear that you both have more things coming up together. I, for one, can't wait to read them. And I think we have some time for questions from the audience if anyone has anything that they'd like to ask Angourie and Kate.
Are you going to a beach or something like that for this new book?
Do you mean to
like just
to sit down and write?
For your mindset to be positioned properly.
No, I don't
We
think.
hadn't planned it, but now you mention it. It might be a good idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, I mean, we've got some at different stages, but the one that's at an earlier stage, maybe we should
Yeah,
just.
we probably should actually.
Yeah.
We need to have a meeting about that.
Book adaptations are such a huge thing now. Is there a book, a YA book, or any book that you love that you want to be adapted to a movie or TV show?
Yes, and there are, and whenever I read a book that I want to be adapted, I immediately Google if someone is making it. There was one that I read many years ago now, Illuminae by Amy Kaufman and Jay Kristoff. That's a fantastic YA sci-fi series that I would love to see adapted, but I don't know if that's happening. So yeah, that's one that sticks out in my mind. And then there are also a lot of romance reads that I would love to see adapted. I loved the Get a Life Chloe Brown series from Talia Hibbert. That was so fun to read. So yeah, I want to see more rom-coms. I think we all want to see more rom-coms. Yeah.
Rom-coms for life.
What about you? Do you have any that stick out?
Oh, I'm just reminded, you know how Elizabeth Taylor's an amazing movie star. There's another Elizabeth Taylor who wrote a lot of novels, and they're all these very gentle dramas about women and women's internal lives. Yeah, and yeah, I reckon like a whole anthology series of those would be awesome.
We also just read Custom of the Country by Edith Wharton, which was going to be adapted, and then didn't.
Yes.
And you were disappointed.
Yes.
Yeah.
That would make an amazing. I mean, I presume you've read that book as well.
Well, The Age of Innocence is coming to Netflix as a limited series,
Who's
so that's
that?
exciting. I'm not sure, but I saw that it got announced, which is exciting. So I can't wait to watch.
Audition.
Oh, yes.
Because you are mother and daughter, is there ever a time where you're like, let's not talk about it now, or can we not talk about it tonight, or let's not talk about it at dinner, or are you just, if you're open, do you just allow yourselves to jump in at any point?
That's a good question. I mean, I think, you know, the family, there's another daughter and also my partner, so, you know, we couldn't really sit at dinner saying, but, you know, should they go to England? But certainly there were definitely moments, also because I often have all of my best ideas come in the shower, so and then I've just got to tell Angourie when it's, you know, whenever, like straight away. So there are definitely times when we'd be like, hang on, I've just had this amazing idea, and we would each do that to each other. So kind of yes and no.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, in the back.
You sort of touched on it, but what was the hardest thing in writing together as a team? Either the mother-daughter dynamic or just in general, was there a hardest thing to get over?
Quite honestly, it was easier and better than writing by myself. Yeah, it's just great having someone who you trust to keep you accountable and keep you going, and who you want to be the best you can possibly be for, so that by myself I can get into terrible troughs. So yeah, it's really great. No downside for me.
No, there wasn't a downside for me either. I think the hardest thing about writing is all like personal, internal stuff of like, is this good enough? Are people gonna hate it? Do I hate it? Probably. And so it's just about getting through that, and it's a lot easier to get through that with someone else who is encouraging you and cheering you on, which is nice. And there was no fear to throw out bad ideas because, you know, you're my mum, like you've seen all my bad ideas.
And I think too, we had a really strong shared vision of what we wanted and what we wanted the book to be. So, because I have done other collaborations where it kind of becomes clear, or it became clear throughout the process that we were each writing different things. And then when you try to mash them together, that just doesn't work. But we knew exactly, we had one vision, which was good.
Oh, yes. So I also love Jane Austen, always have. And I know that it's very much of a specific time and place, as you did earlier. What were like the most challenging scenes or maybe through lines or aspects to bring into our contemporary society? I mean, I love the way that you sort of positioned the Mr. Darcy as this very specific kind of celebrity and all that, but in terms of the mores and the values of the time, like there must have been some serious challenges about how do you really make that work in the 21st century versus the 19th century.
That's a great question. I'm just going to repeat it for the people up the back if you didn't hear. It was a question about the challenges of adapting something from the early 19th century into the 21st century, and what was the hardest thing about bringing in those morals and values into the present.
So the biggest challenge, the biggest single challenge was dealing with Lydia's elopement. So in Pride and Prejudice, Lydia runs off without being married, which absolutely would ruin her life forever, and also potentially ruin the life of her entire family by bringing them down because she ran off without being married. This is all to do with women not being considered real people and being considered property of men. And obviously we did not want to go there, and that was the single hardest thing. And we both looked at every single adaptation and updating of Pride and Prejudice and looked for that moment. And when you start looking for it, you go, yeah, you had trouble too, didn't you? So we spent a lot of time working on that and came up with a solution that we were really happy with in the end. So I'm not going to give spoilers.
Yeah, but it is tricky also because like it's different now. Like with Lydia, I think she's only 15 in Pride and Prejudice, and so there are those issues that come in about age and teenagers. And in Jane Austen's time, the teenager wasn't even a category of person. You were a child, and then you were an adult ready to be married. There were also other issues of consent that came in terms of. There's another character in the book in Pride and Prejudice called Mr. Collins, and he's this awfully cringy, awkward person, and he proposes to Elizabeth, and she says no, and I hope that's not a spoiler for Pride and Prejudice, but there's this awful scene where she's saying, no, I'm not interested, and he keeps pushing, and he keeps pressuring her, and he keeps saying, oh, I know this is just a game, you women, you say no, but really you mean yes. And that is something that is unfortunately, I think, still relatable and true in our society and culture. And we really wanted to bring that moment into our book and also talk about why that's wrong, why that's not okay, and at the same time keep that character as a comedic character, because in Jane Austen, Mr. Collins is kind of the comedic relief because he's so bumbling and awkward and really boring, and we wanted to make him funny and also understand it and acknowledge the real threat and uncomfortability that comes with all those questions. Yeah.
Are there any other questions? Yes.
For both of you, what are some of your favorite books that you've ever read?
The question was favorite books we've ever read. I mean, wow.
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, I mentioned Virginia Woolf before, and a book that really changed the way that I read and think is a book of hers that I studied in school called A Room of One's Own, and it's this sort of seminal feminist text. It's based on 2 lectures that she gave at Oxford in the early 1920s, and it's all about women writers and the history and legacy of women writers. And she basically in these 2 essays, she she poses the question, why are there not more great women writers? And she answers that question through talking about history and contemporary writers, and it's just I think I read it when I was 17, and I don't know, angry and frustrated with the world, and I read that and I thought, wow, she has really taken all my anger and frustration and she's put it into 120 pages and explained exactly how we got there and exactly why I'm so mad, and I just loved that.
Yeah, that's a good answer. I have a few that are my favourites, and they're all a bit obscure, but well, not all a bit obscure. I love a book called Alone in Berlin by Hans Fallada that was written during World War II or just after World War II in Germany by a writer who was there, and there are a lot of books. I know many books set during World War II and sort of explaining what it was like, but you can really tell when you can tell this different perspective from somebody who was right in it, and it's a book about what makes your life worth living. And similarly, Henry Handel Richardson, who I mentioned before, so she's kind of an Australian equivalent of Edith Wharton, I think, very similar. Not as fun. She can get pretty dark, but she wrote a book called The Fortunes of Richard Marnie, and same thing. It's very much about what makes a good life, and I like those books. They go deep, they go hard, but also all of Jane Austen.
Yeah.
Love, love, love.
Great. Anything else? Well, great. Angourie and Kate will be signing their books right here. And in case you guys haven't, there are also themed mocktails available in theme with the book, so be sure to get one. And thank you all so much for being here. Celebrating the book.